What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we are going over Tech Tuesday. If you're new here, you're not sure what it is. So we take the deck of the week and kind of break down ways in which you might be able to better your matchup into it. This week we did take a look at OP03 Red Luffy. And the deck is very aggressive and it's more control based now. But it also is very event heavy due to the nature of playing things like the blocker Marco and 5-drop Marco and Fire Fist. So we're going to be looking at just some general cards. Again, this won't be really everything that you can test. This is just everything that I could think of right now. But also there's going to be some cards that I don't have in here, but I will mention just because I don't want this to be a 25+ minute video. So the first cards to start off with are black. The first cards that we have are the blockers within black. Anything that you're playing against Luffy, because they're so aggro, you want to play as many blockers down as you can to minimize the amount of damage you're taking. And that way you have leeway for when they do play the unblockable Luffys. Because if you're at, 3 or 2 life, you have blockers on board, they play the unblockable Luffy. They have to swing with it, attach 2 Dawn to it, which means that they're committing more Dawn to use on the attack, which if it goes through, that's fine because you have other blockers on the board. But then it means that the Luffy has to be tapped so you can actually deal with it. So we have Suru, we have a Bleno in here because if it does get KO'd, you get to do some summoning cards and things like that. You can kind of add consistency back. Then we have Fukuro. Again, it can't be KO'd by effects, which is really solid, which means Marco can't KO it. So you do get a permanent blocker. Same with Borsalino. It can't be KO'd on your opponent's turn. So, and it's a 6,000 blocker, so that means that if they decide to swing with a Luffy without any Dawn on it, it's a 6,000 attack, and it's really easy to block. And then we have Kaku in here. I have Kaku in here simply because if you do manage to get a Luffy player down to a 3 cost on their 5-drop Luffy, you can play something like a Suru down, minus the 2, and then Kaku to KO. Super solid. And then I have Sacred Jewel in here simply for the fact that if you get board control, you're in a really solid spot. So Sacred Jewel actually means that you can just pay 1 Dawn, trash a card from your hand, and then you don't have to commit anything else. The character that you basically used it on can't be KO'd. So overall, it's really solid. The other card in here, again, not mentioned, are things like Sakazuki, these 5-drop 7,000 power smoker that can't be KO'd by effects. So overall, super solid. Then for blue, we have Boa Hancock. This Boa Hancock's actually really good for blue because it does have the trigger to play this card. And it doesn't come in rested, so you can actually have a blocker hit off a life. Then we have the 1-drop Trafalgar Law. Again, more blockers. Just really all what you want to do is try to, build as much hand potential as you can while taking as little life as possible. I actually have Crocodile in here from Starter Deck 3. It's good simply for the fact that it's a blocker, but also the on-block. It means that you get to place a character with a cost of 2 or less to the bottom of the owner's deck, so it means that you can put things like Curly to Dawn back to the bottom of the deck. Or you can put things like Makino. Makino's a really solid card if you can hit it off of the on-block. Then we have Mihawk. Mihawk just bottom decks something, so you can kind of bottom deck their unblockable Luffys and go from there. Then we have Kuma. Kuma is a good blocker in the sense that if you are able to block with it, you can play down the 4-drop Pacifista, which means you get a 6,000 body on board, which means you can still keep the board potential going, and you're really trading 1 for 1. And the Pacifista has 6,000 power, which means that it matches the unblockable Luffy, so they have to commit cards from their hand to protect it. Then we have Overheat. Overheat's in here. Again, it's a 4,000 power, but also you get to return an active character with a cost of 3 or less to the owner's hand. So you can punish them for spending their Dawn. If they spend Dawn, play 3-drop Zoro, but don't swing with it right away. You can Overheat, bounce it back to their hand, and then they just kind of lose momentum from there. It's not a whole lot of momentum that they lose, but it definitely is something. And the trigger, being able to bounce a character of 4 or less, means that you can bounce things like the unblockable, or not unblockable Marco, the blocker Marco. And then I actually have Arabesque Brickfist, just because with being able to return a character of 4 or less to the owner's hand, it's kind of the same as Overheat, except it guarantees that you can put the Marco back, which means that they lose out on 4 Dawn with having to spend 4 Dawn to play the Marco. and then, you know, you bounce it back to their hand, and So it gets a body off the board, which means that they have to pay more Dawn to summon it the following turn, which means that they're technically a turn behind. Next I have green. Eustace Captain Kidd is really solid. Again, it's a blocker, so the most amount of damage that you can risk not taking by blocking attacks means that you can deal with the unblockable Luffys later. Same with Capone. Shachi and Penguin are kind of a hand-to-hand duo, as when you play one, you can play the other, so you get 2 blockers. Then we have Okiku. Okiku is in here simply because with green, being able to rest multiple characters is great, but Okiku's actually is one of the only cards that can rest any card theoretically that they play, aside from the 9-drop Edward Newgate. But there's some more cards, but we'll get into it later. But Okiku is in here simply because it can rest the 5-drop Marcos that they play, so that means that you can rest them and then go from there on attacking. Then we have Izo in here. Again, Izo is typically played, but Izo's good for being able to tap anything that's 4-drop or less, so you can actually tap the 4-drop Marco that's a blocker, KO it, and make them kind of lose hand advantage by constantly bringing things back. Then we have the 8-drop Eustace Captain Kidd. They do play Otama and Jet Pistol as well as Gordon, but forcing them to find those cards means that it's more disruption that they're playing rather than aggression. And then when they use things like Jet Pistol, it actually means that you are able to kind of solidify a event out of their hand, which means that they can't bring back the 5-drop Marco as easily. Now again, they can go Otama, Gordon, and then the 5-drop Marco, but they have to be on an 8 Dawn curve for that, which means if you get there first, they're wasting a lot of their turn to be able to do that. And they're also bottom decking a Gordon, which is 1 out of their hand. They're playing a 5-drop Marco down, which is nice for them, but they're getting rid of a Kid, but they're also playing down a 2k counter as a character to minus the 2k. So uses Captain Kidd, good disruption card, kind of buys you a turn. Double attack Banish Yamato, we've talked about that plenty of times before. It's just super solid because Banish means that you're not giving them extra cards in their hand. Then we have Odin. I have Odin in here simply because it can attack twice. So being able to attack something like a Marco that's tapped, if they let it go and toss an event, you can re-swing on it and make them burn more cards out of their hand. Same with the Craig, except for the fact that you can trash a card and then KO 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less, and it also gains double attack. So the double attack applies pressure, but also the on-play means that you can KO other things on board that they might be attacking with. Simply put, like Zoros, if they have blockers, if you manage to tap them beforehand, you can get rid of them, so overall solid. Then we have Demon Face. You can KO 2 of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 5 or less, so this means that if they get 2 unblockable Luffys down, you can pay 6 Dawn, Demon Face, and get rid of them, and they're KO'd, and they don't really have any way to bring anything back. And this also means that you can KO things like their Marcos, things like that, so it's super solid. Then we have Paradise Totsuka. You can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4, again, just more disruption. Diablo Jam, Venison Shoot, KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less, more disruption. MH5, rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less. This is good because you can rest things like their searchers, which means that their searchers can't be, attackers later on, and the trigger's good because it can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So if they choose to play an unblockable Luffy and not swing with it, if you hit this off trigger, then you can actually tap it and target it next turn. Also in here should be, I believe it's Draw Sword, just so that way you can tap anything. Overall, super solid. Then for purple, now as we get into purple, more disruption aspects. You have the blocker Uta, again, blocking, mainly what you want to do. And the unblock, it means that you can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less, so you can buy yourself a turn. Or, if they play an unblockable Luffy down and swing with it, you can block and then tap their Marco, which means that you have 2 targets to attack next turn. Super solid. And Black Maria and the other Black Maria. I just realized that these are both the same Black Marias, but that's besides the point. Just more blockers, again, super disruption based. Same with Queen, except Queen gives you the chance to kind of filter your hand so you can better benefit from it. And then we have the 10-drop Kaido. Kaido's really good in the Luffy matchup, simply put, because you can disrupt the whole field, so you can make them kind of work for what they, want to kind of achieve. And again, it's kind of redundant if you think about it in the fact that they can bring back their Marcos and stuff, but at the same time, when you 10 drop Kaido, it means that they're going to have to be spending a lot of resources in hand to bring those cards back. If they want to bring back the 5 drop Marco, they have to get rid of events out of their hand. If they want to bring back the 4 drop, they have to get rid of Whitebeard Pirate cards. So in turn, it kind of makes them spend more resources. And so it really makes them think. And depending on how your life count is, you actually might be in a good spot, in the sense of where if they bring those things back, you still won't lose the game and you can buy yourself another turn. And, you know, in turn, when it comes back to it, you have a 12,000 attacker plus your leader, things like that. Next, Magellan. Magellan's in here simply put because disruption to their Dawn means that they can't get to their curve as easily, which makes it super solid. Hell's Judgment, you give minus 3,000 to 2. It's just really good, simply put, because they're so aggro that you can kind of shut down multiple attacks. Same with Top Knot. You can return up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less to the bottom of the owner's deck for Dawn minus 2. So this means that you can bottom deck their only one of Blocker Marco. And then for Red, Red is really anything you make it. It's really a 50-50 matchup. But Gum Gum Red Hawk is really good, simply put, because you can get rid of a lot of their baby attackers, so while blocking yourself, and also the trigger is really solid. Then for yellow, we do have the blockers within the set, so we have the Charlotte Brûlée, Charlotte Galette, and then we have Charlie. Charlie's good, simply put, because if you play it, you get a blocker, but also you can kind of mess with your opponent's life, and it's really solid. Then we have Charlotte Cracker. Most of the time you're going to be behind on life, so the Cracker actually gives you the chance to be really aggressive, and you do actually have the chance to play it, which is solid. Then we have Charlotte Smoothie. This is mainly an endgame closer, but simply put, you know, when you're attacking, you get to make it a 7k, so if they don't have blockers on board, a lot of their events are disruption based, aside from things like Radical Beam, but they only play 1 of, and then Guard Point. They do play Red Hawk, but again, most of the time it's disruption based stuff, so Charlotte Smoothie is really solid at being able to kind of bait those out. And then we have the 10 drop Lin Lin. Lin Lin's always needed, but it's really solid to max out at, simply put, because, you know, if they're hiding behind a bunch of events and bunch of characters, it gives you the chance to really mess with the life, so you get to add yourself a life plus minus theirs, so you don't have to deal with the board as heavy. And then you have Buzzcut Mochi. Again, this is in here because if you do have less life than your opponent, you get to KO one of their characters with a cost of 4 or less, which means that you can buy yourself another turn. So overall, those are some of the cards. Again, some of them. There's a lot of cards that you can actually play to better your matchup, but again, we're already at 13 minutes, so this video would be a lot longer otherwise. So do what you will with it. Again, anything that really blocks attacks, disrupts your opponent's board, punishes them for, you know, playing Dawn or bounces characters back, is kind of the best way you can go about it. So as always, thank you guys for watching today's video. If you do enjoy it, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Otherwise, I will catch you guys in tomorrow's episode of What to Buy Wednesday.